Sometimes today's gospel reading is interpreted along with the lines of the title of a book by Presbyterian pastor Reverend John Ortberg. If you want to walk on water, you've got to get out of the boat. The interpretation goes something like this. Peter had the right idea when he got out of the boat, quite literally stepping out in faith. Peter, like all of us, is invited to step out into the storms of life, where Jesus calls us to take courage, leave the safety of the boat, and come to him. If we have enough faith in Jesus and keep our focus firmly on him, we will not sink, despite the wind and the waves. If only Peter had not become distracted. When he kept his eyes on Jesus, he could walk on water. When he got anxious and sidetracked from keeping his focus on Jesus, Peter, whose name means rock, went down like a stone. Jesus wants us to be bold in our faith. Jesus wants us to walk on water, dream big, take risks in our lives. And if we can just be faithful enough, we will succeed. That's how I have usually understood this lesson in the past. His analysis makes a lot of sense to me, and maybe for you as well. But there may be another way to look at this lesson, a path less traveled, perhaps, that also has meaning for us in our lives. Walking on water has become synonymous, even outside the church, with the idea of stepping out in boldness, of taking a risk. If you do an internet search on Walk on Water, you'll get links to business consulting firms, fashion companies, science projects. All of them proponents of going the extra mile. Yet another biblical phrase that's gone mainstream. It has become another phrase right along the lines of thinking outside of the box. The early bird catches the worm. And when the going gets tough, the tough get going. There's no doubt that Jesus wants us to take risks for the sake of the gospel. No doubt Jesus wants us to keep our eyes focused on him and his mission. No doubt Jesus wants us to have the gift of faith. He's the one who reminded his followers in Matthew 19:26. With God, all things are possible. He's the one who told the fishermen to leave everything and follow him. He's the one who tells us to take up our cross, to lose our lives for his sake, that if we have faith even the size of a mustard seed, we could say to the mountain, get up and move, and it would. No doubt Jesus wants us to take risks. Be bold. Do outrageous things for the gospel. Step out in faith and follow. But is that really what Jesus wants us to hear in this particular gospel lesson? One thing that's true about Matthew's gospel is that it is interested in community. It's really interested in figuring out what it means to be the church, the body of Christ in the world. The gathering of people who are trying to follow Christ together. The boat has, from the very early days of the Christian community, been a symbol for the church. And it's no wonder. Think of a ship. A vessel large enough that it takes a number of people doing diverse things to get it to move. A ship is a great symbol for the church. Moving through the waters on a beautiful day can be a wonderful experience. When wind and water and sailors cooperate, the journey can feel more like a vacation than a day-to-day experience. Sometimes, though, life on the ship can get routine. The same chores need to get done every day. The wind doesn't always do what the sailors want. A large crew means a variety of people, which means a variety of ideas and personalities and perspectives. The ship's mission can be jeopardized by those who are tempted to set sail alone, or declare mutiny, or even jump overboard. Christians have long treasured the image of the church as a ship, beautiful but vulnerable, seaworthy but subject to storm and winds and waves. In today's gospel lesson, Jesus makes the disciples, those who would follow him, get into a boat and head out across the sea. The gospel says Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead on the other side. Jesus would meet up with them again later. But first he was going to take some time to be by himself and pray. But a storm blows up, as storms did in the lives of the disciples and as they do in our lives. And Jesus doesn't wait for them to get to the other side. He comes to them, walking across the water, the very picture of God that they knew from their scriptures. Psalm 77 says, "When the waters saw you, O God, when the waters saw you, they were afraid. The very deep trembled. Your way was through the sea, your path through the mighty waters, yet your footprints were unseen." In Job 9:8, God overcomes the powers of chaos, pictured as a stormy sea. It says, God alone stretched out the heavens and trampled the waves of the sea. Jesus would not leave his disciples alone in the boat to perish in the storm. He comes to them and says, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." And then there's Peter. And while we usually just skip right through enthusiastic Peter, faithfully thinking outside the box, jumping overboard and pulling off an amazing stunt, if even just for a moment, what Peter actually does first is that he says something. He says, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." If it is you. If. There are only a couple of other times in the whole of the gospel where someone addresses Jesus with "if," and they're not pretty. The devil does it 3 times to Jesus when he tempts him in the desert. "If you are the Son of God, make stones into bread. Call down special privileges from God. Worship me." When Jesus is hanging on the cross, people mock him, calling out, "If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." And here, Peter joins his voice with the voice of the devil and the voice of those who mocked Christ. "If it is you, Jesus, command me to come to you on the water." If. Jesus doesn't reprimand Peter for being afraid. Of course you're afraid in the midst of a storm. But why did you doubt? Did you really think I wouldn't come? Did you really think I wouldn't save you? Did you really think that when I told you to get into the boat and go on ahead, that I would ever leave you alone? Take heart. It is I. Do not be afraid. Jesus and Peter get into the boat. The wind ceases, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." Matthew's whole gospel ends with the resurrected Jesus appearing to his disciples. The resurrected Christ himself appears where he said he would meet them. And Matthew tells us, when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Even then, even with the risen Jesus standing right in front of them, they worshipped, but some doubted. As we know, that's not where the story ends, though. Even still, in the midst of their worship, Even to those who doubt, Jesus gives a command and a promise. The command is this: all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And then he gives them a promise, all of them. And remember, saith Jesus, I am with you always to the end of the age. Storms will blow up in our lives, but Jesus has not left us alone. The one who calms the storms and makes the winds to cease is still with us. He still has work for us to do. And yes, it will mean stepping out in faith, but not necessarily getting out of the boat, not going it alone, not leaving the community of the disciples. The purpose of a ship is to set sail, not to stay at the dock. There are plenty of adventures ahead, and Jesus will bid us to follow. And he will say to us, in the midst of any storm, take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid.